hush fell over the dragon pit after the council's mutterings subsided. The morning sun, now a silver dome arching over the broken walls. Pigeons wheeled through open arches, their wings whispering like restless ghosts. Tyrion Lannister, stripped to dirty doublet and iron-clasped shackles, felt the gaze of lords and ladies heavy upon him. Yet heavier still was the hush. He cleared his throat, the sound echoing off charred stone. Too loud, too frail at once. "Lords and ladies," he began, voice rasped by weeks of darkness. "The realm has no ruler, and the longer the Iron Throne lies vacant, the wider its cracks grow. We must choose." His gaze swept the semicircle of faces. Edmure, red-faced and keen. Gendry, shoulders squared under his new Baratheon black and gold. Yara, eyes like twin flints, jaw set. Samwell, trembling yet stubborn. Sir Davos, calm but searching. And in the corner, between soldiers of the Unsullied, the Stark siblings kept their silent formation. Arya alert as a drawn blade. Sansa serene and cold as winter dawn. Bran unmoving in his wheeled chair. And Jon Snow no longer, yet more the exile than ever. Tyrion's words trailed into a cough. Dust, smoke memories, and the stale taste of ash filled his lungs. "We cannot," he continued, "afford another war for succession." Silence. Eyes slid toward Bran the Broken, the boy king who was no boy and no king. The birds circled again, as if they too waited for a verdict. Tyrion's chains clinked as he gestured to the strange-eyed young man. Bran Stark, Brandon the Broken, has seen more of this world than any of us. Its histories, its tragedies, its hopes. In him is memory, the realm's spine. Bran's pale pupils focused on something distant, pupils dark wells catching the ruin-bright light. The council's tension compressed into that unblinking gaze. Even Arya seemed to hold her breath. Jon, flanked by gray worms unsullied, shifted on the balls of his feet as though senses warned of an unseen blade. "All mankind," Tyrion pressed, "has need of..." "No." Bran's voice, though quiet, carried like a winter gust through a dead forest. The single word cut Tyrion short, cut every lord short, cut the pigeons circling into a sudden explosion outward. Their wings fanned dust off broken columns. Sansa's mouth parted. Arya's fingers flexed. Tyrion opened, closed, then opened his own mouth. Pardon, your grace?" The last two words stumbled, unsure whether they belonged to the air anymore. Bran's chair creaked as he straightened an inch. "I will not be king." White shafts from the high broken archway slanted across his lap, painting him half in light, half in shadow. "The realm requires more than memory. It needs the living heart of a warrior who fought for it, bled for it, died for it." A tremor ran through Jon, as though somewhere beneath the dragon pit, a dragon stirred again. Sansa's throat tightened. "Brother," she said softly, "you came south for a purpose." Her expression balanced between relief and apprehension. Bran's attention shifted. No turning of head, no movement of eyes, but everyone felt the cold beams settle on Jon. Tyrion followed that invisible trajectory, mind racing. "Jon Snow," Bran said, the syllables echoing from crumbled vaults, "is Aegon Targaryen by blood, son of Rhaegar, rightful heir to the Iron Throne, yet forged by the North, taught honor by Eddard Stark, fire and ice in equal measure. The wheel must break, but it should break beneath someone who understands its burden." The name Aegon seemed at once hollow and monumental. Lord Edmure Tully took a half-step forward, frustration coloring his cheeks. "The man is in chains under unsullied guard. The North named him traitor and kinslayer when he slew Daenerys Stormborn." Arya's blade-sharp gaze flicked to Edmure. "Killed a tyrant," she corrected. Yara Greyjoy spat softly. "Killed the woman who freed me and mine." Sir Davos moved between potential paths of violence. "We stand in the aftermath of ashes. Let us not kindle new flames." His voice, honed on ships' decks and gale winds, carried reason but not command. Tyrion raised his manacled hands. A decision must still be reached. But the path he had so carefully plotted was slipping beneath him like fine wet sand. Bran's refusal was unanticipated, even to him, though the boy had foretold it in a whisper long ago that Tyrion, drunk and burned, dismissed as fever dream. "Free him," Bran stated, to no one and to everyone. Grey Worm's jaw locked. The Unsullied behind him remained statues. "No," Grey Worm said with lethal softness. "The prisoner murdered our queen." "Your queen?" Arya muttered. Marbled cold as northern rivers. Bran's expression did not change. "You stand upon land foreign to you. The war is over, Grey Worm. Your purpose henceforth is your choice, but you cannot rule its end." The Master of War took a step, spear haft thumping. "Justice demands." "Justice," spoke Sansa, her glacial voice threading between them, "is for kings to render." She turned to Bran. "If not you, who, little brother?" "Not me," Bran answered, gaze never leaving Jon. A hush once more bristled within the ruin. Somewhere, high above the open dome, a raven wheeled solitary. Its cry split the stillness and died. Jon's throat moved as he swallowed the dryness that sudden inattention had breathed into him. "My place is in the Night's Watch. I took that vow thrice over." His voice sounded older, cracked by iron and snow. Bran's pupils dilated. "There is no Night's Watch now. No wall, no oath, no purpose unfulfilled. Your vows ended when the world ended." The statement seemed final, yet the council's faces pressed against its edges like restless tides. Gendry's thick brows knitted. Sam licked his lips, half raising a finger as if to cite ancient exceptions. Davos exhaled through his beard. Tyrion's mind raced along new roads. Bran had removed himself from the board entirely, leaving Jon the sole logical piece. Yet Tyrion knew Jon's reluctance. The man was the very marrow of reluctance, his sense of duty strangling every desire he'd ever possessed. "What if I refuse?" Jon's words were a whisper, but the pit amplified them. He faced Bran with quiet anguish. "I did not want crowns before. I want none now." Bran's pale cheeks did not flush, nor his voice falter. Refusal or acceptance matters to the living more than to the world. The realm will choose a king. Better the reluctant than the eager. Menduentyre. Even Yara shifted at that. Memory of Daenerys's eager flames rang silent. "And if the realm chooses otherwise?" Jon pressed. For the first time, Bran allowed something like humanity into his gaze. "Then I have misread the river's course. But I do not misread." Tyrion found his breath. "Free him," he repeated, now in support of Bran's command. "Let the lords decide with clear eyes, not fear's fog." Grey Worm's gaze slid to the circle of Westerosi. There were more swords than Unsullied now, if they stood against him. A tremor of calculation flickered across his face. Slowly, he nodded to a lieutenant. Shackles were produced, keys rattled, and the iron gate opened upon Jon. Metal scraped stone. Jon brought his wrists forward, almost reluctant, as if the iron itself anchored him to a truer self had loose once freed. The clink of falling chains sounded like bells tolling across water. The Lord's circle widened, the moment rippling outward like sunlight across disturbed harbor dark. Tyrion felt as though he watched history detach from its moorings. He saw within Jon's eyes the weight of ghosts. Ned Stark's stern love, Robb's laughter, Ygritte's fiery dying breath, Daenerys' cooling blood upon his hands. Bran gestured once, an airy motion, slender fingers slicing dust motes. "Approach the council." Jon hesitated. Davos offered a small nod, part reassurance, part plea. Arya's face, a hawk's mask, betrayed a flicker of something older than the young woman she still resembled. Trust. Sansa, inscrutable behind lines of poise, gave nothing away. Yet her eyes, gray-blue and unblinking, invited him forward. He stepped into the semicircle. Sunlight brushed the ragged black he still wore. Night's Watch leathers with seams split and stitched again. Ash clung to their creases. Beneath them, slow-healing bruises still darkened his skin. He looked not a king, but a battered sentinel. "Why me?" he asked Bran, though his words reached them all. Bran's lids lowered, lashes pale against skin. Because you are the song of ice and fire made flesh. Because you have killed for duty and died for love. Because you remember what it is to be nobody. Because you will never sit easy upon power, and that unease will keep your blade angled at your own heart. The realm has had tyrants and saviors, both too certain of themselves. It needs a man unsure. Wandel. The council absorbed the verdict. Edmure opened his mouth again. Something in Sansa's look silenced him. Sam drew a shaky breath. Gendry's wide hands flexed, perhaps recalling his own months tutoring himself to nobility. If we name Jon, Yara said, voice lower, throat trembling with some buried loyalty to the Dragon Queen. What of the Iron Islands' promise of freedom? What of the North's independence Sansa swore to hold? Will your king undo what was granted? None. All eyes went to Sansa at once. Her red hair blazed in the morning. She raised her chin. The North bent knee to Daenerys, believing she would grant us self-rule. If we now place my own brother, a son of Stark blood, on the throne, perhaps we may trust reassurance rather than parchment promises. Tyrion recognized the chess move within her words. Tie northern independence to Jon's ascent now, rather than Bran's. She offered compromise in the very breath of her demand. Jon felt the trap and the rescue together. If I accept, the North will be free, he declared. The words dropped from his lips heavy as anchors. Let all lands earn the governance they wish through council, not fire. Davos coughed softly, eyes shining. Sam's shoulders sagged, relief mixing with awe. Yara inclined her head, unsatisfied, but seeing paths open. Edmure Tully, red hair caught by breeze, tried again for relevance. The Riverlands stand with House Stark. He swallowed. Or House Targaryen, I suppose. Gendry's grin flashed quick. Baratheon blood welcomes Targaryen once more. So long as the throne learns from its scars. The lords murmured, agreement humming like bees disturbed in early spring. Grey Worm spoke last, when the hum grew certain. The Unsullied will sail for Endieth. We ask only safe passage and the justice you promised. His dark eyes met Jon's. In them flickered grief and hatred tempered to a resolve no less lethal. Jon bowed his head. Go in peace. Take what provisions, ships, and coin the crown can offer. There it was, the crown, spoken as though it already rested on his brow. The pit held its breath. Birds above stilled mid-air, wings outstretched upon the blue. Tyrion felt the shift of ages, as though very slowly the cracked stones repaired themselves. Ivy retreating, gold melting once more into seat and sigil. Bran closed his eyes. It is done. Sansa nodded. Her cheeks flushed now that the inevitable had coalesced. Tyrion stepped forward, just one pace, and turned to Grey Worm. Remove my chains. He startled at his own temerity, yet recognized there was no other moment. The Unsullied captain gestured. Tyrion's bonds fell. Ridges of rusty iron left angry welts upon his wrists. Freedom stung. He brushed grit from his doublet, straightened his spine, and, ignoring the stiffness in aching legs, approached Jon. Your Grace, he said, low and formal, and sank to one knee. His voice barely carried. I counsel you in all things, should you wish it. And I ask forgiveness, in all things. Jon looked down at him, storm-gray eyes flickering with conflict. They had been made enemies by fate's perverse handwriting, yet no man could deny what Tyrion had gambled today. Rise, he murmured. You have kept faith with the living at least. That is worth more than sins against the dead. Soft. Those last words, for only they shared the memory of the Queen's final breath. Tyrion stood. Behind him, men and women knelt. Davos with slow dignity, Sam with clumsy eagerness, Edmure with relief, Gendry with youthful oaths shining, Yara with reluctance yet acceptance. Even Arya bent, though the gesture seemed more one travails might give to another than subject to sovereign. Only Sansa remained standing. Queen of the Free North, she inclined her head in sovereign parity. Grey Worm kept spear planted upright, a sentinel apart. and Bran remained still, gaze skyward, as though already gone beyond them all. Jon felt the air shift, warm on his face though the morning breeze had sharpened. Somewhere beyond these broken walls lay smoldering streets, rivers running foul with ash, charred bones of innocence. Somewhere distant, fields awaited tilling, small folk awaited taxes, ships awaited sails mended. He tasted soot at the thought. "We begin," he said. Just that. And destiny sealed itself. PGSQL. The Red Keep smoldered still, but masons had hammered out a corridor of safe ascent through the ruin so that the lords might walk without stumbling over charred beams. Jon stood at its threshold 3 days later, the hush of dawn clinging to every shattered column. Day by day fires dimmed, yet the rubble's heat remained, palpitating like a dying heart at his feet. Otters of attendants fussed around him, tailors measuring shawls of black and crimson, trimmed with stark gray, scribes with ink-smudged fingers, requesting his seal upon decrees of bread dispersal, a slender septon muttering litanies for lost kin of Flea Bottom. Jon endured them as one might endure sharp rain, head bowed, mind distant. Through the broken archway, Tyrion approached, hair newly shorn, beard trimmed, rings no longer upon fingers once fond of gold. 100 parchments bulged beneath his arm. His breath steamed white. "Your Grace," he said, tasting the words with caution each time, "the first of your councils gather in the Queen's ballroom. What remains of it?" Jon turned, steps crunching over debris. The weight of crownless expectation rode his shoulders heavier than armor. He still refused formal coronation. There was no throne to crown him, only twisted swords fused to char. Until the keep was rebuilt, or some symbol chosen, he would rule without shining circlet or jeweled scepter. Tyrion had argued tradition, but Jon's stubborn refusal held. Let the realm see humility before it saw pageantry. They walked in silence a stretch, past stone masons setting pulleys, unsullied loading grain barrels for Enaeth, and northern men sorting firewood for camp kitchens. Smoke stung their nostrils, mingled with scents of fresh-cut timber. "Letters continue to arrive," Tyrion remarked quietly. "Some lords question the council's legitimacy." Jon grunted. "Which lords?" "House Royce of Runestone. House Hightower." "Hightower." Jon sighed. "What does the Citadel say?" "That your birth is confirmed by hidden records Samwell found. Stark and Targaryen intersecting bloodlines validate legitimacy," Tyrion replied. "But the Maester's Council further review. Scholarly caution." Jon paused, boots scraping marble ground blackened by flame. He studied Tyrion's weary face. "Are you still certain of this path?" The dwarf's smile carried lines deeper than memory. "Not in the least. But certainty is a luxury we left buried in ash with the old throne." Another silence, filled by the gentle clack of stone on stone. Far below, gulls cried across Blackwater's waters. "How fares Bran?" Jon asked. Tyrion exhaled. "He spends hours in the Godswood your men planted within the keep's burnt courtyard. White weirwood saplings struggle among shattered columns. He watches them as if listening to tales only he can hear. He seems distantly content." Jon envisioned his brother under the rising sun, pale hands resting on white bark, eyes rolled whale-white in dream trance. A pang, half sorrow, half gratitude, lanced him. Whatever weight Bran had shed by refusing the throne, Jon now bore. They continued toward the ballroom, a space where mosaic floors glittered beneath broken skylight, where a dais stood draped in banners half-seared. Lords and ladies clustered beneath makeshift canopies, Samwell in his new robes of Grand Maester-elect, Davos wearing a chain forged of ship nails, Brienne of Tarth gleaming in fresh-oiled steel, Gendry delivering whispers to Edmure, and Sansa, tall, resplendent in gray wool edged with white fox fur, a crown of slender bronze branches woven around her braids. Queen in the north. Conversation stilled when Jon entered, though the smoky chime of breeze through shattered windows remained. He did not ascend the dais. Instead, he joined the circle as equal, startling some, reassuring others. His gaze moved from face to face, seeking not loyalty, but honesty. "What news of the Reach?" he asked at once. Sam cleared his throat. "Winter rains have turned fields to mud. Harvest stores from Old Town could spoil if roads remain blocked. We dispatch wagons," Jon said. "What coin remains in crown coffers?" Tyrion produced parchment. Victory celebrations and reconstruction drained reserves. "We have enough for half repairs. None for Reach relief unless we open loans with Iron Bank." Murmurs stirred like breeze through leaves. Davos grimaced. "The bank will anchor chains of debt round your reign before it takes root." Jon nodded, recalling Stannis' warnings. "Then levy voluntary tithe from lords who stood idle while King's Landing burned. Tell them to mend the farms that feed them." A hum of approval. Sansa's lips hinted at smile. Through the meeting, Jon steered questions of roads, orphans, sewage, the carving of new pipes through charred warrens, the counting of spears across Westeros' war-spent holdfasts. He listened more than spoke, letting Tyrion, Sam, Davos each answer before he shaped outcome. Slowly, counselors adjusted from shock at his informal manner to measured trust. Yet beneath each edict thrummed one unvoiced matter: coronation. It lingered in sidelong glances, in parchment margins scribbled with questions. Jon could feel it, heavy as summer thunder. At last Edmure ventured, awkward. "Your Grace, tradition." Jon raised a hand. "When the keep stands whole, and the people have bread, we may speak of crowns. Until then, steel your backs to labor." The room, startled, accepted. Tyrion's mouth twitched upward in something like approval and pity. The meeting wound down. Scribes darting forth to gather statements. Maesters shelving scrolls. Jon lingered. As lords dispersed under shafts of dusty light, he caught Sansa's gaze. She approached. The hush of fur over wool brushing marble. "You wield silent power well," she said. He exhaled. Nothing silent about it. They stood alone amid broken pillars. Wind whistled through jagged ceiling gaps, threading her hair like copper ribbons. "The North is at peace," she offered, almost gently. "Wintertown sings songs of your crowning, yet I see snow in your eyes that has never melted." Jon's jaw flexed. "Snow rarely melts, sister." She studied him. "Will you ever set that burden down?" "Not mine to set." He forced a small shrug. "Your people need rebuilding. My people need feeding. The realm needs a ruler who does not burn it." She finished quietly. "I did not think it would be you." He smiled without warmth. "Nor did I." A pause deeper than memory opened between them, broken by boots stamping near the door. Brienne directing guards. Sansa's breath glimmered faint in chill air. "Be wary," she said at last. "Not all lords rejoicing this choice will keep rejoicing. The game remains." Jon inclined his head. "I have wolves at my back and dragons in my blood. Let them come." She touched his arm once, almost sisterly again. Then she turned, cloak swirling like twilight across frost, and left. PGSQL. Night clawed the black water in lazy waves, moonlight fracturing upon ripples. Jon stood atop a broken parapet, cloak whipping in river wind. Fires no longer dotted the city skyline, only scattered lanterns along half-repaired walls. The hush felt vast, stars tremoring overhead like watchful eyes. Footsteps approached. Soft. Jon did not turn. "You walk lightly for a Lannister," he said. Tyrion halted beside him, leaning elbows on stone crumbly with soot. "Practice. Years avoiding death's call taught me hush." He offered Jon a flask. The king, or not yet king, sipped, throat warming. Tyrion watched the lights flicker. "When Bran spoke your name, did you feel relief or dread?" "Both." "Ace did I." Tyrion sighed. "Long. We are partners in impossible tasks again." Jon handed back the flask. "Tell me truth. Can this hold? The realm or your rule?" "Both." Tyrion considered. "Aegon the Conqueror waged war. Jaehaerys wrought peace. The realm held through both because people saw purpose. Give them purpose again. Roads passable, grain plenty, justice fair, and they will let crowns be crowns. Jon watched a barge drift, lantern glowing amber. And when they forget, Tyrion's smile glimmered sad. Then your children, if you dare raise any, will fight anew. This is the wheel we claim to break. Remember? Ay. They lapsed into quiet. The river lapped against stone. Overhead, ravens beat west toward the night. When Tyrion spoke again, voice barely more than reed whistle, he asked, "Do you dream of her?" Jon closed eyes. Memory rushed, a cavern of shattered pillars, warm breath ending on a dagger's kiss. Yes, so do I. Wind gusted, sending eddies of soot swirling. Jon opened his eyes. We carry our ghosts, or they carry us, he murmured. Either way, we keep walking. Tyrion raised the flask in salute. To walking, then. Jon almost smiled. To walking. PGSQL. Dawn found the godswood within the keep's courtyard cloaked in mist. The saplings Bran watched stood fragile, leaves rimmed with frost, though it was summer. Jon entered alone, boots muffled on damp soil. Birds chirped, tentative. At the far side, Bran waited, wheels of his chair sunk slightly into moss. Jon stopped before him. You summoned me. Bran nodded. The weirwood listens. I wished you to hear also. Nendadero. Jon looked at the saplings. I hear nothing. You hear salt in the wind, waves upon stone, the breath of distant deer wolves. Bran's eyes were not wholly present. The tree remembers, he added. Jon waited. Mist thickened, tugging at his cloak edges like soft fingers. You doubt yourself. Only fools never doubt. What do you fear most? Bran asked, calm as pond water. Jon swallowed. Becoming her. Bran's lids fluttered. You are not her, nor are you him. Rhaegar. Your life is your own melody. Jon sighed. You speak like riddles. I speak like river water. Jon huffed. If you saw this path, why not warn me? Why leave the weight to me? Bran tilted his head. Because no one but you could carry it and keep breathing. Silence. Mist coiled between them. The sapling's leaves quivered. Jon knelt, resting a hand on damp earth. Tell me if I lead the realm to ruin. Bran's gaze, wide and ancient, softened. I will. Jon rose again. He touched a weirwood leaf. Its white flesh cold. I miss the north. When the city mends and the crown anchors, ride north. Kings travel. Let them see you. Let the wall's remnants remind you. Return each year, return each season. A king unseen grows brittle. Oh. Jon nodded. A vow then. Bran closed his eyes. Wind hissed through broken battlements, carrying scents of blossom and ash. Leaving the godswood, Jon felt a quiet settle in his chest, where turmoil had churned. It was not peace. Peace was a luxury kings seldom gathered, but a readiness for the weight he now bore. PGSQ. Weeks unfolded like slow banners on still mornings. Hammer strikes beat rhythm with gull cries. Street urchins scurried with baskets of fresh-baked bread, where once they scavenged for charred potatoes. What walls remained of King's Landing bloomed with quick-growing ivy as masons relatticed foundations. Jon walked those streets in simple cloak, Brienne and Davos behind at respectful distance. He listened to bakers haggle, to stonecutters sing, to septons chant laments for dead children. He waded ankle-deep through half-cleared alleys. Spoke to mothers nursing infants born beneath red skies. He offered calloused hands to lift rubble, stacked bricks shoulder-high, accepted water from a sweating cooper who did not know he served a king. That night, he returned to the keep with back aching, nails chipped, but eyes brighter. Tyrion met him at courtyard stables. Your Grace, Tyrion scolded gently. I have missives from Dornish envoys requiring immediate reply. Jon brushed dust from tunic. They will wait till morning. They will, but the lords you carry bricks for may not wait for walls. Tyrion's expression held worry and admiration. Kings must trust people to build. They trust more what they see, Jon replied, and stepped past into torchlit hallways, still smelling of smoke. PGSQL. Moon-flooded night again, and Jon found himself upon a parapet with no company save distant torches and restless thoughts. Footsteps approached once more, but lighter. Feather on snow. Arya emerged from shadow, knife absent for once. "You watch the river often," she said. "It reminds me of the gift at Castle Black." She leaned against the parapet, hair blown across cheeks. "I sail at dawn." Jon turned sharply. "North or west?" "West of west." Her grin flickered quick. "I promised." He exhaled, sorrow and pride entwined. "When will you return? When my feet itch for frozen ground again? Or when you need someone's throat slit?" The jest carried warmth. Jon clasped her wrist. "Come back." "I will." She pressed a small carved direwolf into his palm. Dark wood, whittled by skilled hands. "So Ghost keeps watch even when I wander." He swallowed. They hugged, brief but fierce. Then she slipped away, footsteps fading into Keep's labyrinth. Jon opened his palm, staring at the wooden wolf, its eyes carved deep as night. He tucked it inside tunic near heart. PGSQL. Papers, policies, provisions, days layered upon days like bricks upon mortar. Samwell's new chain clinked as he read old laws, amending them beneath Jon's patient scrutiny. Brienne was named Lord Commander, Lady Commander, of the King's Guard reborn. Davos Hand of the King after Tyrion refused again, citing the realm's distrust of his name. Yet Jon insisted he stay as Master of Whisperers in all but title. Tyrion wore no chain, but his counsel whispered beneath each decree. Spring crept into the air, though Shar still wreathed towers. Shoots of green sprouted between cobblestones. Children drew chalk crowns upon walls. Sometimes six-pointed, sometimes wolf-headed, sometimes a strange amalgam of wings and snowflakes. Jon passed them, heard their giggles, felt a warmth unfurl. Yet beyond city, letters rode swift as hawks. Reports of bandits in riverlands, of ironborn raids on arbor shipping lanes, of Sellsword captains promising crowns to pretenders. Some sealed missives spoke in hushed ink of Aegon the Younger surviving in Essos, of Dornish princes considering rebellion should the Reach's granaries fail. The wheel groaned even as it seemed stilled. One evening, in council, Gendry laid a riveted gauntlet on table. "Let me ride west," he urged. "Bandits harry the Rose Road. Baratheon banners will remind them of cost." Brienne nodded. "Take 100 knights. Bring banners of the king, not Baratheon." Jon gestured assent. "Ride at dawn." He caught Gendry's quick grin. Robert's ghost flickered in the young lord's confidence. After council dispersed, Jon lingered over parchment lists, candle guttering low. Tyrion, seated across from him, scribbled red amendments. "You work until bones crack," Tyrion muttered, quill scratching. Jon rubbed his forehead. "I thought the wall trained endurance. Walls keep out the cold. They do not keep out parchment." Tyrion dipped quill. "Have you considered marriage?" Jon blinked, blindsided. "No. You will need heirs. Alliances." He inhaled sharply. Memory of silver hair and dragonfire carved across his mind. "Not yet." Tyrion watched him, eyes gentle. "The realm will ask. Let it ask." Jon rose, rolling his shoulders. "I give them peace first." Tyrion set quill aside. "Peace will never be enough for some. It will have to be." He extinguished candle. Darkness folded around them, torchlight lining corridor beyond. Jon's silhouette seemed carved from twilight. "Tomorrow we ride the rubble lines. New city walls need designing." Tyrion sighed. "I shall bring chalk." PGSQL. In dreams that night, Jon wandered fields of snow under burning skies. Wolves howled, dragons wept molten tears, and the Iron Throne lay shattered into a bed of red winter roses. When he awoke before dawn, the wooden direwolf lay warm in his fist. He rose, dressed, and stepped onto the balcony where Pale City lay asleep, under moon-washed silence. Somewhere across dark water, sails unfurled for lands unknown. Arius promised sailing with them. Somewhere north, winter wolves pace starlit forests, waiting for king's return. Somewhere within, keep shadows. Ravens whispered to a boy who was no boy, who saw all paths. Jon closed his eyes. He breathed river wind, felt ash's lingering scent, replaced slowly by brine and blossom. He did not feel a crown upon his head, but he felt its weight within marrow, binding him to dawn. And dawn came, bleeding gentle gold across ruins soon to rebuild, across banners soon to fly, across hearts stitched by hope and fear alike. As light touched his face, Jon Snow, Aegon, yet ever Snow, opened his eyes to day's first promise. The 5-hour tale had barely begun. PGSQL. The fourth morning after Arya's departure dawned beneath a low slate sky, the clouds heavy with a summer rain that had drifted on cold northern winds. In the half-completed corridor that would join the new council tower to the battered remnants of Maegor's Holdfast, Jon walked alone, his boots echoing on damp stone. Mortar still reeked of lime and grit. The carpenter's saws shrilled faintly in the distance. Masons bowed as he passed, some too surprised to do more than straighten their backs and wipe dust from their brows. He returned each nod with a muttered greeting and pressed onward, his cloak darkening where rain speckled the wool. 2 days before, a raven had arrived from Storm's End with Gendry's seal. The bandits preying on the Rose Road had been scattered after a brief, vicious clash. 6 men lay dead beneath Baratheon hammers. Twice that number marched in irons toward King's Landing to face trial. Yet the parchment carried darker news as well. Rumors of black-sailed longships prowling the Shield Islands, and a whisper, half-believed that some ironborn captains meant to test the new king's resolve. Jon kept the letter beneath his pillow and dreamt of drowned men chanting as waves crashed over a pyre of broken swords. He reached the base of the tower where grand stairs still lacked balustrades. Wind sighed through open slits. At the top, Davos waited beside Tyrion, rain glittering in the hand's grizzled beard. A soldier's oilskin cloak flapped behind him. "Your Grace," Davos called as Jon climbed. "Gendry's riders are returned. They gather in the Queen's ballroom." Jon nodded, catching his breath. "Did they bring the prisoners?" "Aye," Davos said, voice low. "And news of villages burned beyond Bitterbridge. Whoever leads these raids wears no sigil we recognize, but they strike with sellsword discipline. Might be Golden Company remnants." Tyrion rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Or mercenaries hired by lords who fancy a crown for themselves. I have a list." He patted a leather folio. "But no proof for any name it holds." Jon's jaw tightened. "Proof must be earned then." He started toward the ballroom. The 2 men fell in step beside him. PGSQL. The Queen's ballroom had lost its ceiling to dragonfire months before, yet canvas awnings now spanned the great gap overhead, filtering daylight into a cool green gloom. Gendry stood near the dais, gauntlets tucked beneath his arm, mud staining the hem of his leather surcoat. Behind him, 20 riders lounged wearily, their horses still steaming in the courtyard beyond the shattered arch. A pair of iron-caged wagons flanked the hall. Inside, sullen captives stared out, shackled ankle to ankle. Jon crossed the mosaic floor, boots rasping over glassy tiles that depicted long-faded roses and crowned stags. Gendry knelt, head bowed, until Jon drew him back to his feet with a firm grip on his forearm. "You rode swift," Jon said. "Better to end trouble quick than let it fester." Gendry replied, rubbing sore knuckles. Most of these folk were simple thieves grown bold by chaos. But the ones who commanded them wore good mail, spoke Lysine. They carried this. He unclasped a bundle of damp cloth, and revealed a brass badge shaped like a seahorse coiled around a trident. Tyrion's brows rose. "House Valerian's sigil. Driftmark's seat is empty since Lord Corlys died. The new lord was sworn to the Queen, the late Queen." His gaze flicked toward Jon. "A pretender might claim that banner. A sell-sale might purchase it," Davos muttered. "Or seize it off a corpse." Jon turned the badge in his palm, the metal cold. "We question the prisoners separately. If they answer, they spend their lives rebuilding what they burned. If not, he closed his fist. The realm learned swift at peace is guarded. Rain pattered on the canvas overhead like distant applause. Jon released the badge to Gendry. See them fed and watered. They marched to the quarries at first light. Gendry inclined his head, relief plain in his blue eyes. As you command. When the riders had gone, Tyrion lingered. Mercy tempered with labor, he said softly. The small folk will cheer that. Some lords may not. Let them grumble. Jon's voice was flat. They grumbled when Daenerys swore mercy too, until fire answered them. I'll give them no fire, but neither will I grant license to prey on the weak. Tyrion studied him, lips pursed. Forgive me, but I must ask. How long can a king rule without the tools other kings wield? A crown, a throne, a royal marriage, as long as he remembers why those tools were forged. Jon walked to the dais' edge where shattered marble stared up like jagged teeth. Beyond, masons hammered at scaffolds, and voices of labor rose against the rain. There will come a time for ceremony, Tyrion. Just not yet. Tyrion sighed. Ceremony can bind wounds too. Think of bread and salt shared beneath a sept's roof. Think of vows spoken before gods and men. The realm is a patient with cracked bones. Splints and rest will heal her, but a poultice of symbol eases the ache. Then cow. Jon ran a hand through his damp hair and offered the faintest of smiles. You'd have me wed half the kingdoms into quiet. I'd have you choose a woman you trust, Tyrion corrected. And let the rest of the realm see you trust her. Sansa's name has already crossed lips from White Harbor to Old Town. Jon's shoulders stiffened. Sansa is my sister. Cousin by blood, Tyrion said gently. Distant enough for Targaryen precedents. Closer than many royal matches. And an alliance binding North and Crown might still the murmurs of rebellion before they roar. Thou. Jon's answer was a curt shake of his head. She rules the North. I will not pull her south in chains of gold. He glanced toward the open arch. When I wed, if I wed, it will be for the kingdom. Yes, but also for the children born of it. Children deserve more than transactions. Tyrion gave a small bow. As you wish. Only remember this council when lords bring their daughters in procession. They'll come with songs and smiles sharp as daggers. He tucked the folio beneath his arm. I will see to the interrogations. Left alone. Jon breathed the scent of wet canvas and stone dust and wondered how many eyes watched through torn awnings. For kings, even in humility, walk stages where every step became a lesson or a threat. PGSQL. That evening, the rain thickened into a storm that lashed the city until streets glimmered like black mirrors. In the highest room of the makeshift rookery, Maester Samwell huddled over a brazier, coaxing flame beneath a kettle. Scrolls lay scattered across 2 trestle tables. Accounts of harvests expected from the Vale. Ship manifests bound for Dorne, weather readings from the Citadel's coastal towers. Fat droplets battered the shutters, forcing Sam to raise his voice when Jon entered. I thought you'd be abed, Sam said, pushing his spectacles up the bridge of his nose. Candlelight flickered on the mirrored chain that now draped his shoulders, less glinting gold than polished pewter, but he wore it with a mix of pride and bashful unease. Jon peeled off his sodden cloak. Sleep can wait. I wanted word of the North Road. Madame? Better than yesterday, Sam replied, searching among his parchments. Lord Serwyn reports winter melt flooding the last river, but the bridge at Barrow Hall holds. Your supply trains should pass without delay. Jon exhaled, relief easing a knot at his spine. And White Harbor? Harbor traffic doubles since the court named Morna Manderley Master of Ships, Sam said, eyes gleaming. 53 vessels loaded with lumber and stone are sailing south. Twice that plan to follow next moon. The Manderleys see profit rebuilding King's Landing, and prefer you owe them rather than the Iron Bank. Done? Jon managed a weary chuckle. Wyman all over again. Sam's grin broadened. Indeed. I've also letters from the Citadel. The Archmaesters confirm the records of Rhaegar's annulment and marriage, but require sworn witness. They request the presence of Sir Barristan Selmy. Sam faltered, remembering, or any remaining Kingsguard of Aerys' reign. Joan's gaze drifted to the storm-lashed window. Sir Gerald Hightower died at the Tower of Joy. Sir Arthur with him. Who else lives? Nender. Sir Jaime. Sam whispered. Silence deepened, filled by rain's steady roar on slates overhead. Jon closed his eyes. Jaime rode north and never returned. Grey wind found his body half gnawed by wolves near the Twins. Then the Citadel must accept parchment alone, Sam said. Your parentage stands on record, if they will it. He stirred the kettle until steam rose. There is another matter, Jon. His voice softened. Sam, ever gentle with hard truths. A raven from Castle Black. Tormund Giantsbane writes that a shadow has stirred beyond the gorge. Something moves in the haunted forest. Folk vanish, and dogs return starved, their furs singed by frost that burns. Then so. Gooseflesh crawled along Jon's forearms. The dead? No sign of whites. Sam hurried. But Tormund fears what cold can call forth. He asks your leave to lead hunters east of the Frostfangs. Jon paced to the narrow embrasure. Lightning split the clouds, bleaching the rooftops in ghost-pale light. He has my leave. Tell him to take torches, dragonglass, and every horn that can sound alarm. Sam dipped his quill. He fidgeted. Jon, we thought the long night ended. So did I, Jon said, watching storm clouds crawl across the sky. In the brazier, coals shifted, and sparks rose like tiny dying stars. PGSQL. 3 days later, the storm cleared, leaving the city scrubbed bright beneath austere blue skies. Scaffolds clung to the keep's charred walls like vast wooden webs. Ropes creaked, pulleys sang, and the ring of steel on stone blended with gull cries off the Blackwater. Jon stood in the courtyard with Brienne of Tarth and a dozen master builders, poring over chalk sketches laid upon a trestle. The throne room must face east, the chief mason argued, jabbing a stubby finger at his drawing. Morning light through tall windows symbolizes renewal. We'll carve columns from dragonstone basalt, strong, resilient, won't burn so hot. Brienne crossed her arms, frowning at the projected walls. Tall windows make archers targets, and basalt chips under siege engines. The mason bristled, beard quivering. You doubt my craft? I doubt the next war will mind your artistry, Brienne replied evenly. Jon raised a hand before tempers flared. Both concerns matter. Build the windows high, slitted for defense. Reinforce with iron lattice disguised in the tracery. He tapped the parchment. Beauty should not cost lives. The mason grudgingly nodded. Brienne sketched quick strokes, amending the plan. And the throne itself? Another builder asked, flicking sawdust from his sleeve. We've gathered melted blades from the ruins. Some wish the Iron Throne restored. All eyes shifted to Jon. The courtyard's quiet deepened. Memories flashed. Jagged swords fused by dragonfire. Daenerys' silhouette crowned in shadow. Snow drifting like ash upon twisted metal. Jon's throat tightened. No throne forged of fear, he said at last. Craft a seat of blackwood and weirwood, carved with the dire wolf and the three-headed dragon intertwined. Let swords line the walls instead, sheathed, points downward. The king should sit upon oaths, not blades. The craftsman exchanged uncertain glances but bowed. Brienne's blue eyes studied him, respect mingling with something sterner. Symbolism alone won't guard you from assassins. We need a Kingsguard worthy of that name. Have you chosen? Jon asked. 4 knights proven in battle, sworn to no house but their honor. Sir Talatarli rides south. Sir Aaron Vance already patrols the city. 2 more yet to name. Jon nodded. Bring them before me on the morrow. She hesitated. Some lords whisper that a woman cannot lead the Kingsguard. Those lords may challenge her with sword in hand, Jon answered, quiet steel in his voice. If they dare. A faint smile touched Brienne's lips. None have dared yet. PGSQL. That night, Jon wandered the lower Bailey where tents housed refugees from burned districts. Lanterns swayed, casting woven shadows across muddy lanes. A ballad drifted from a makeshift tavern, a high, sweet tenor singing of the Dragon Queen's fall and the Wolf King's rise. The verse painted Daenerys as a crimson storm, Jon as the stalwart snow that quenched her flame. Hearing it, Jon's stomach knotted. Truth distorted so easily into song. Near a cookfire, a small girl with soot-black hair twisted straw into doll limbs. Jon knelt, accepting a smile from her mother, a narrow-shouldered woman whose eyes carried both gratitude and fear. The girl peered up, unblinking. "What's her name?" Jon asked, touching the half-formed doll. "Queen Ash," the girl whispered. "She guards us from bad men." Jon swallowed. A good name. He rose before the enormity of their hope spilled out his eyes. The mother bowed low, recognizing him only as a tall man in plain black leathers. He left them with a pouch of coppers and a quiet vow to return. Rainwater pooled along the alley. In its mirror, Jon glimpsed a ghost, himself in Night's Watch blacks, at a crossroad whence any path might lead to doom or dawn. He stepped aside before ripples could erase it. PGSQL. Dawn's first blush had barely touched the horizon when Ghost padded from the tower's shadow. White fur silvered in dim light. The direwolf had roamed the countryside for moons, hunting in burnt woods and sleeping beneath broken spires. Jon felt his approach like cold wind brushing the back of his neck. He knelt, burying his fingers in thick fur, forehead pressed to Ghost's brow. "I feared you'd wandered north after Arya," Jon murmured. Ghost's red eyes glowed with silent reproach. Rain-splashed mud clung to his ruff. A fresh scar marked one ear. Jon stroked the wolf, noting leaner ribs beneath the coat. "You've fought," he said, then winced at the taste of his own words. Had he not fought too, each waking moment? Ghost chuffed softly, almost a laugh. Steps crunched on gravel. Sansa approached, flanked by two of her own guards in gray cloaks. She had arrived the night prior, unexpected, riding through the southern gate with 50 mounted archers and wagons laden with smoked fish and oats. "He found me outside the walls," she said, tone warm despite the chill. "Led me straight to you like a hound tracking errant kin." Jon rose, still resting a hand on Ghost's neck. "It's good to see you." He meant both of them, but his eyes held hers. Sansa examined him. No sister's jest, but the gaze of a queen weighing burdens. "You look thinner." "Masons feed thin gruel," he replied. She arched an eyebrow. "Then I'll send northern cooks." Her cloak fluttered, white fox fur bright against gray wool. "We must speak inside. Council chambers too small for northern tempers." They walked beneath scaffolded arches, Ghost trotting ahead. Inside the map room, a circular chamber whose walls still bore cracks from dragonfire. Sansa removed her gloves and placed them on the carved table. The old painted continents were burnt, but the outlines remained. Westeros singed, Essos scarred. "I come with news from Winterfell." She said, voice low. "Some good." Jon poured wine for them both. "Begin with the good. The harvest in the new gift flourishes," she said. "The fields Samwell set aside for the freed folk yield barley enough to feed 2 valleys. Tormund sends thanks, though he swears at your Southron rains." Jon smiled, brief. "And the troubling?" Sansa traced the riverlands with a gloved finger. "Rumors of a boy in the Stormlands claiming descent from Aegon the Younger. They call him the Stormseed. Small folk flock to his banner, broken men mostly, and rebel sellswords. He preaches that dragons shall rise anew and burn the wolf from the Red Keep." Jon's face hardened. "How old?" 15, perhaps. Too young to lead a revolt, yet not too young to be used by those who would. She met his eyes. Gendry's victory scattered bandits, but rebellions grow like weeds after rain. He sipped wine, tasting ash. We will meet them with roots, not blades. Feed the hungry, heal the wounded. Revolt loses breath if bellies are full. Sansa tilted her head. A king of mercy. Father would approve. Father was beheaded for mercy, Jon reminded her softly. Silence stretched. Outside the cracked window, gulls screamed above the harbor. At last, Sansa spoke again, slower. This council whispers of marriage. Jon stiffened. Not from me, she added. From them. One bride to bind Dorne, another to pacify the Reach. They've sent envoys bearing gifts. Flowers, peaches, a gold cage with twin desert falcons. Nano. Let them wait. Her eyes searched his. Many will press. An unmarried king is a door left open. Jon set his cup aside. Door or no, I will not rush into a union to quiet gossip. The realm will have heirs in time. Legitimate, if it please the Seven, but not bred like horses for alliance. Sansa's shoulders eased, as though some weight lifted. Good. I had feared this city would swallow you whole. It nearly swallowed me once. She inhaled, scenting mortar dust and distant sea. I leave within a fortnight. Winterfell needs me. Jon nodded, yet his chest tightened. Stay as long as you wish. I will stay until the coronation, she said. There is no date. Then, set one. She touched his hand, gentle. The people need closure. A shattered kingdom heals faster when it knows its shape. Jon studied their hands. Her skin bore faint burn scars from the Battle of the Bastards, pale lines across knuckles. They felt like reminders carved into living marble. Very well, he breathed. Trust the masons. When the hall stands ready, we crown. Sansa's smile reached her eyes. Then I will embroider a king's cloak worthy of the North and South alike. Ghost's tail thumped once upon the stone. PGSQLs. That same afternoon, Tyrion guided two men in dark green and orange livery into the audience gallery where Jon waited. Prince Marin Martell of Dorne, slim, copper-skinned, eyes like dusk over red dunes, and his sworn shield, Sir Gadriel Dane, whose silver hair marked the blood of dawn. They bowed, grace and heat, lingering in their cloaks. King Jon, Maron began, voice musical yet cool. The Sunspear bears condolences for the cost of peace and offers sand to shore your foundations. Jon gestured to the benches. Dorne's friendship is welcome. Speak your offer plain. Martell's lips curved. The desert teaches plain words. We bring ships of steelwood beams and vaults of salt-cured dates. In return, we ask safe passage across the Red Mountains for caravans, and tariffs reduced on Dornish wine. Agreed, Jon said before Tyrion could advise. Trade profits both. Martell inclined his head. There's a second boon. Princess Arianne offers her hand. Dorne has prospered under princes. Perhaps the realm will prosper under a princess. Its future queen. His gaze sharpened, testing. Jon held it unflinching. Your princess is brave and wise, but I will not barter women as coin. Martell's brows lifted, then smoothed. The offer stands, should your heart seek alliance by choice, not coin. Tyrion exhaled softly. Sir Gadriel shifted a step as though easing tension from limb. Jon gave a nod of respect. We share that understanding. The Dornish prince rose. Then Dorne stands with the king. When they departed, Tyrion let out a low whistle. Refusal without insult, bravo. The Martells rarely leave negotiations so satisfied after being denied. Jon rubbed his temple. Because they were not denied. They were heard. PGSQL. Night settled, and torches lined the walls of the Godswood courtyard, throwing amber light upon the weirwood saplings. Bran's chair sat beneath the largest, its white bark streaked with veins of red sap that glistened like fresh blood in firelight. Jon approached, cloak swaying. Another vision? He asked. Bran's eyes shimmered. Always. He motioned to the ground beside him. Jon sat cross-legged, like a boy before the old gods. You sense disquiet, Bran said. Storms gather, Jon admitted. In the east. Sell sails test our shores. In the south, a boy claims dragon blood. The north speaks of shadows. I fear war will bloom again before the wounds scab over. Bran tilted his head, listening to unheard winds. War is a weed with roots deep in man's heart. You may hack the stem, but the root lies hidden until rain feeds it. How do I uproot it? You don't, Bran said. You plant stronger trees whose roots drink greedily, leaving no water for weeds. Jon stared at the sapling's pale leaves dancing in torchlight. Stronger trees. Justice. Food. Hope. Bran closed his eyes. And stories. Stories. Tell them, Bran whispered. Of a king who knelt beside his people. Of a throne carved from living wood, not dead steel. Stories turn men's hearts as surely as swords cleave them. Jon thought of the ballad in the tavern. Stories can lie. So can kings, Bran replied. But lies rot. Truth takes root. He opened his eyes. Remember the truth, brother. Remind them. Jon bowed his head. I will. PGSQL. The next moon turned, and summer heat bled through the city like slow wine. Masons chiseled the final archstones into place. Carpenters raised scaffolds inside the new throne hall. Glaziers fitted colored panes depicting direwolves and dragons intertwined amid fields of wheat. South of King's Landing, orchards near the Honeywine flowered again, and merchants spoke of a harvest fit to shame Highgarden's best years. Yet beyond Cape Wrath, black sails still prowled, and in the Riverlands, the storm seed's name echoed in alehouses. Jon dispatched Gendry east, with 200 Crown's Guard, to parley or crush. But weeks passed without Raven, and worry gnawed like rats inside Jon's skull. On the eve of the coronation, as sunset dyed the sky violet, Jon stood on the keep's highest tower beside Davos. Below, in the half-mended streets, braziers flared like fallen stars, and the hum of anticipation drifted upward. Laughter, song, the clatter of mugs, distant drums. The city breathes again, Davos said. Jon leaned on the parapet. For now is enough, Davos answered, his grin wry. If we live every day fearing the next, we'll never live at all. He studied Jon's face. You did well, lad. Better than many born to rule. Jon exhaled. I was born to duty. Rule is duty's shadow. Davos chuckled. Then wear that shadow proudly. He smoothed the royal cloak folded over his arm. Black wool lined with crimson silk, silver clasps shaped like dire wolf heads biting a dragon's tail. The tailor near sobbed sewing this. Said he's making history's skin. Jon accepted the cloak, fingertips tracing the stitching. Does it suit me? He asked softly. A cloak suits anyone ready to shoulder it, Davos replied, clapping his shoulder. Bells began to ring across the city. Soft at first, then swelling. The maiden's smile, the smith's hammer, the mother's call. Jon felt the sound vibrate through stone into his bones. A hush fell under the bell's song, as if even the ghosts paused to listen. Tomorrow, he would walk the newly hewn hall, where sunbeams filtered through colored glass, onto a seat carved from wood, older than men's memories. He would take the oaths, lay his sword across his lap, and swear to guard the living. Tomorrow, lords would kneel, banners would dip, and stories would sprout like grass after wildfire. But tonight, he stood beneath twilight, cloak in hand, and turned his face to the wind. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Arya charted unknown seas. Somewhere north, Tormund stalked a shadow. Somewhere in the reach, rebels whispered. The wheel creaked still. Yet for this moment, the realm breathed in unity, like a great beast waking from nightmare. Jon closed his eyes, listening to the bells, to the waves, to ghosts' soft footfalls behind him, to all the living sounds a king must love before he dares protect them. When he opened them again, stars pricked the darkening sky, and each seemed to blaze with silent promise. He fastened the cloak at his throat. Indal, Kambi, SQL. Night song still clung to the ragged stones of the drum tower, when John finally surrendered the pretense of sleep. 3 hours before dawn, the keep's silence felt more brittle than snow crust. Yet every breath he drew cracked its shell. The sigh of linen as he rose, the muted rasp of leather jerkin sliding over a linen shirt, the padding footfalls that tried and failed to match a ghost's tread. Ghost himself awaited beside the door, tail beating once against the boards, red eyes fixed on the candle stub John carried. The wick guttered as he lifted it. A tremor of wax battered his knuckle, but he scarcely felt the burn. He needed air and motion, and the raw honesty of the night. Down then, past levels where the master builders slept in company with their half-shaped oak beams, past the gallery where masons had left chalk sigils on the wall to guide crane teams come dawn, past a landing that still smelled faintly of smoke despite weeks of labor. The corridor below opened to a parapet that overlooked the river. John stepped into wind and lantern glow, ghost at heel, and drew the salt damp air as if he might swallow courage with it. The black water gleamed pewter between banks of black. No moon rode above, only a sprinkling of distant stars half buried in high thin cloud. On the far side of the city, where the sept once stood, 4 new bonfires burned ceremonial watch, their flames mirrored in the swell. Each had been lit at dusk by orphaned children who wore garlands of dandelion stems. The sight warmed him more deeply than wine. Those same children sang now, faint as reeds in evening current, rehearsing the hymn they would raise when day broke and the city gathered. John listened until the plaintive notes slipped beyond hearing. Beside his knee, Ghost's ears pricked. A figment of memory tugged Joan's mind to Castle Black, to the weeping face of a dying day before the watch chose him their young commander. Fear and expectation had tasted the same then, cold iron scraped on tongue. He wondered if they would always taste the same, if kingship and weariness were synonyms in the old Valerian tongue. A bootfall sounded behind him, deliberate in its unwillingness to startle. He turned to find Davos emerging from shadow, a fur-lined cloak around his shoulders, and a battered lantern swinging in his hand. The old smuggler nodded to Ghost, who sniffed and accepted the intrusion. "Couldn't sleep either," Davos said quietly. Wind dragged his beard sideways, a gray pennant. "Storms inside my skull, though the sky looks fair." John offered a wry half-smile. "We count fair skies differently, you and I. Those clouds carry rain by midday." That they might." Davos leaned on the stone crenel, lantern banking a pool of honey light. "But dawn'll break dry, and that's when you'll need it dry. Small mercies, laddie-dotty. Or," he corrected himself with a shrug, "Your Grace." The title still felt ill-fitting as borrowed boots, but John made himself meet it. "You've given orders for the procession. All arranged. We'll step from the east gate an hour after first light. I'd wager half the city slept in the streets to keep good vantage." Davos' tone softened. "There'll be clamor. Some will cheer, some will only stare. Let them see you see them. I'll try." John fingered the clasp of his jerkin. It was simple horn, nothing like the silver direwolves the tailor intended for his coronation cloak, yet it steadied him to feel sturdier bone in his grasp. "Any word from Gendry?" Davos' expression pinched. "None. Ravens might be lost in the storm line off the Dornish coast, they say, or he's riding deeper than expected." John caught the unsaid worry. "He'll manage. Robert's blood does not break for the first gust of wind." "True enough, but men with Robert's blood have been known to court broken heads." Davos sighed. "We'll pray the lad's hammer is louder than his heart." They spoke a little longer of mundane things. Seed grain shipments from White Harbor, the placement of a temporary infirmary near Rainey's Hill, the stubborn leak in the south wall cistern. By the time silence lulled, faint color had crept along the horizon, a wine-red bruise that promised sunrise. Davos extinguished his lantern. "You've time for a mouthful of hot porridge yet?" Maester Sam ordered oats with honey. Claims heroes can't rule hungry. "Heroes," John repeated, almost bitter. Well, eat anyway." Davos touched 2 fingers to brow in salute, and withdrew. His old sailor's tread faded down the stairs. John lingered, one hand resting on Ghost's withers, until the first gull cried. Then he turned for the kitchen galleries, accepting that this too was part of the path. To let the realm bear witness even when he preferred darkness. Breakfast was haste and half-thoughts. The cooks bowed until their knees whitened, pressing wooden bowls ladled with thick oats, studded by a few raisins. Precious fruit, this close to spring's start. Jon ate standing, thanked them, and overtook Samwell half a corridor away. The maester puffed downhill from the rookery with a satchel heavy against his hip. "Genealogies," Sam explained between breaths. Sweat already blurred his brow, though the air still held night's chill. "I'll read them at the oath in case any great-uncle demands proof you're not a black brother usurper." "You mean to duel their doubts with parchment," Jon said. "If need be, I'll bludgeon them with it," Sam answered, a laugh wheezing free. 700 pages of Citadel sealing wax, weighs near as much as Gendry's hammer. They parted before the royal library, where Sam veered to gather Davos and Tyrion, and Jon ascended toward the seamstress alcove carved beneath the new throne hall's gallery. 2 needleworkers awaited inside, birds of smoke-gray silk themselves, fussing over the king's cloak spread across a trestle. The garment was heavier than chainmail when they set it on his shoulders, black wolfskin trimmed with narrow braid of red dragon hide, lined in wool the color of winter dusk. Sansa had embroidered its edges with weirwood leaves, each vein a thread of pale silver that caught light like ice. Tyrion arrived at the final fastening, calming the women with a flatterer's joke, and turning critical gaze on Jon's silhouette. "Stark stoicism becomes you." Still, a smile would not crack the stone too much. "If I smile, half the lords will think I plot something," Jon murmured. "Good. Keep them guessing." Tyrion pivoted on his heel. "Your escort forms outside." The escort numbered fewer than tradition demanded. Jon had insisted. 500 knights was spectacle. 100 with bread wagons behind was message. Brienne of Tarth rode at his right hand, steel polished to mirror brightness. Sir Aaron Vance at his left, cloak bearing the sigil of the trident but sword sworn only to crown. Behind, the nascent Kingsguard marched 2 by 2 in enameled half-helms, carved like direwolf snarls. Their cloaks were plain white. Brienne refused gilding until deeds earned it. The east gate yawned bright as hammered gold when they emerged. Dawn had broken full, and the city answered. Jon felt the cry of thousands ricochet across the buildings, a roar mixed of wonder and worry and something he dared name hope. Flower petals flew from windows, striking armor with soft staccato. Bakers raised sweet biscuits, still steaming to the riders. Ragged veterans lifted crutches and cheered until tears cut channels through soot on their faces. Jon kept his vow. He met their eyes. Not merely raised a hand, but slowed to nod at a fishwife who brandished pickled herring on a stick, to clasp arms with a one-armed potter whose kiln had exploded in the sack, to lift a street boy up behind a rider so the child could glimpse the procession. Each gesture cost seconds and summoned murmurs of confusion from some nobles in line, but Brienne never hurried him, nor did the Kingsguard falter. They adapted, flowing like water round his choices. The throne hall rose atop 3 wide terraces carved from fresh stone and faced east as the chief mason demanded. New steps of veined granite gleamed beneath banners, gray direwolf entangled lovingly with red 3-headed dragon. Foliage from the godswood had been woven into swags, green leaves bright against the stone like spring perseverance. Lannister crimson, Tyrell rose, Martell's sun, Aaron falcon, Baratheon stag, Tully trout, and Manderley merman. Each great house standard snapped above their delegations. Even the Iron Island's kraken curved black on gold where Yara stood glowering, armor scarlet-etched and salt crust still on her boots. Her retinue was modest, 20 raiders and 1 maester captain in grease-stained robes, but their presence declared a grudging fealty few expected. Inside, the hall smelled of sawdust, fresh oil, pine resin, and beeswax candles. Colored glass poured cascades of saffron light onto the floor. The new seat of rule dominated the far dais, black wood for its frame, veined like night-frozen rivers, and pale weirwood inlay climbing the back like living vines crowned by a single direwolf's head, intertwined with a dragon's wings. Blades lined the walls instead of the seat. Dulled steel laid flat in crossed patterns, their hilts downward, their points sealed beneath oak panels. They made mosaics of ancient wars without threatening the present. Samuel waited at halfway point with his satchel. Bran at the daïs's foot, flanked by twin black cloaks of the Night's Watch who had come to pay homage, though their order numbered fewer than a company now. Sansa stood beside Bran, northern crown glinting, hair spun red gold in stained glass light. She carried a small casket, ornately carved in sight of all watchers. Trumpets sounded thrice. Tyrion's voice rang, clear and sure, though shackles no longer weighed his wrists. People of Westeros, lords and ladies of the Seven Kingdoms, free folk of hills and shore, behold Jon of houses Targaryen and Stark, first of his name, chosen of the realm. The echo met cheers, some thunderous, some hesitant. Jon climbed the steps. Every heartbeat felt like an anvil blow. Ghost padded to the dais edge and lay down, enormous head on paws, watching. Sam began the formal proof, reading Rhaegar's secret marriage, corroborations by two still-living septons, a copy of High Septon Maynard's annulment entry, annotations by Archmaester Valen confirming authenticity. A few mutters drifted from the Reach row, but no lord raised open challenge. When Sam finished, Tyrion produced a parchment petition signed by 27 surviving great and minor houses, naming Jon their choice after Bran's refusal. That, too, he read. Last came Sansa. She opened the casket. Inside rested a circlet of interlocked weirwood leaves tipped with hammered black iron thorns. No gems, no shining gold, just living memory bound with tempered resolve. She lifted it and looked to Jon. "Do you accept this crown?" she asked. "I accept the duty it binds," Jon said. "And will you, before gods and men, guard the realms of the living, uphold justice, keep faith with small folk and lord alike?" His throat tightened. "I will." She set the circlet lightly on his brow. It weighed less than expectation. Sansa stepped back. The hall exhaled as if the building itself had held breath. Bran's chair rolled forward under the push of a sworn underservant. Bran raised one hand, two fingers extended in old First Men benediction. "The king is crowned. Let memory witness." Then Davos knelt, sword laid across palms, offering it hilt first. Jon took the blade, turned to the assembly, and placed it point down before the throne. It stood upright in a slot invisible within the dais, symbol of service, not threat. With that, the hall erupted in cheers sincere enough to scour the rafters. The small folk outside, hearing the roar, answered tenfold. Bells in distant sept shells pealed of their own accord, rung by hands that remembered famine and smoke, but now found strength to hope. Jon seated himself. The carved wood felt smooth, warm, alive. He sensed rather than saw Brienne motion the Kingsguard to flank him. She herself stood behind and to his sword side, the protective angle a silent promise. Lords advanced with oaths. Prince Meryn Martell first, kneeling in bright orange braid. Yara second, muttering half a vow, half a threat. Lord Royce representing the Vale. Lord Tarley of Hornhill removed helmet in uneasy respect. Morna Manderly grinning broad as a harbor gate. Even young Lady Wild of Rainhouse curtsying despite rumors her coffers financed the Storm Seed rebellion. Rainhouse. The name pricked, like a thorn. Jon tucked the pain aside for now and greeted each vow with measured gratitude. In their eyes he watched for cunning and found plenty, but he noted loyalty standing beside it in equal measure. People had come to believe, or at least to wager that believing might profit them. Sometimes that was all peace required. When ceremony ended, Tyrion clapped his hands for the second stage. Bread and salt distributed not to lords but to townsfolk waiting in the great square outside. Carts rolled forth, drawn by draft horses and laden with loaves, smoked fish, turnip pies, the first feast the city had seen since before the Dragonfire. Jon followed to the threshold and watched bakers lift steaming platters over makeshift trestles. Children darted beneath guards' legs, laughing. A clang of steel ripped the reverie. Brienne spun, hand on pommel, just as a cloaked figure lunged from behind a pillar 20 feet distant. The assailant hurled a throwing knife in a single whip-lean motion, aimed not for Jon but for Bran. Ghost's snarl split the air. The direwolf surged, enormous white figure streaking. The knife clattered on stone. Having struck Ghost's shoulder guard, a piece of boiled leather Davos insisted the beast wear after too many near skirmishes. Brienne closed the gap in 2 thunderous strides. Her sword hammered the would-be killer's wrist. Bones snapped like dry twigs. Guards piled on, pinning the wiry man who bit and spat beneath helm of patched mail. Tyrion arrived, panting, eyes wide. Jon knelt by Ghost to check the wolf's hide. The blade had ripped only leather. No blood welled. Relief washed cold as meltwater. The prisoner was dragged before the dais. Tyrion yanked the helm, free to reveal narrow olive face, hair shorn uneven, ears notched by blades. No sigil pinned his cloak, but a coin fell from his belt. The iron mask of the faceless men cast in brass, used often by petty assassins to claim fearsome repute. Brienne picked it up with 2 fingers. Expression unreadable. "No one," the prisoner hissed in Lysine accent, slick as oil. "No one pays for this." "Someone does," Jon said. The man laughed, blood frothing at cut lip. "We all pay." He clenched his jaw. And swallowed. Moments later, he convulsed. Brienne caught his shoulders, but it was no use. Poison's black stain bloomed on his tongue. He died within breaths. Silence lapped the hall. Lords whispered. Some grasped hilts. Sansa's eyes hardened like river ice. Tyrion signaled the guards to clear the corpse. Jon straightened. Whoever sent him misjudged the realm's resolve. His voice did not need to rise. The hush carried it as far as the banners. "We will discover the hand behind the shadow." He glanced to Bran, whose eyes were half closed, as if urging some distant witness. The younger Stark murmured soft enough no one but Jon and Sansa heard. "Storms brew in more shapes than clouds." The feast continued, but a chill underlay the merriment. Wine cups clinked, musicians played, yet conversation bent toward this attempt. This omen. Jon circulated, performing the duty of presence. But always he felt the dagger's flight repeating in his mind, measuring arcs of danger around every ally. Near the orchard terrace, Arianne Martell cornered him. Her perfume was spice and sun oil, and her gown revealed desert-hardened shoulders. She spoke low so courtiers saw only smiles. "A bold day, my liege. Blood vows and blades alike. Dorne once crowned young Beeler with 7 doves. You received steel instead. The realm sheds old feathers," Jon replied. Her gaze glittered. "We shed what no longer serves, but you will need more than wolves to ward sorcery." She lifted a coin like the one Brienne found, turning it between fingers. "Such trinkets resell in Sunspear every fortnight. Can you trace them? I can choke the flow for a time. If a sandstorm knocks tin booths to dust, should we weep?" Jon inclined his head. "My gratitude." Arianne leaned closer. "Gratitude is a seed. Water it with wine, and it may flower into alliance." Her eyes darted meaningfully. Then she moved away, hips swinging. Tyrion reappeared, tugging Jon to a quiet alcove behind a half-finished pillar. "The assassin carried Raven's teeth currency," he murmured. "Issuance common along the Carthene coast. Also this." He slipped a folded letter under Jon's cloak. The wax seal half melted but still bore a kraken with a woman's face. "Yara?" Jon asked. "So it would seem, but she swears ignorance. Claims her wax store was raided months ago. Forged, perhaps." Tyrion's mouth tightened. "Or someone would see Ironborn blamed. Either way, convenient that a kraken surfaces hours after a secret sell-sale badge from Driftmark. A net of false trails," Jon said. "And somewhere within swims the true fish. We'll need patience to gut it." Jon tucked the letter inside his sleeve. "Begin with the corpse. San may know poisons from Old Town." "Mes." They rejoined the feast. Lutes quickened their tempo, candles sank low. One by one the lords departed. Vale first, to secure mountain passes. Tyrell nephews to guard gold shipments. Yara to her longship anchored mouth of the river. Bran vanished earlier. Jon guessed he rode wind in ravenskin. Sansa escorted northern bannermen to their quarters, her face coolly serene. Brienne posted extra guards around the tower where Jon would sleep, if sleep came. It did not. Raven wings beat inside his skull, repeating Bran's warning. Just before false dawn, a hammering shook the outer gate. A rider drenched in mud lurched from saddle straight into guard arms. The parchment he thrust upward bore Gendry's broken seal. The captain raced to the king's chamber. Jon sliced the cord with his dagger. Storm's End besieged. Not rebels alone. Ships with black sails, fierce in silence, Hammershore batteries by night. Leader unseen, but cry of crew. Long live the Kraken Queen, devourer of wolves. We hold the gate. Send aid swift or thunder breaks. Across the letter smeared a brown streak. Jon first thought mud. The scent betrayed it. Blood, half-dried. By sunrise the war council reconvened. Sansa, Davos, Tyrion. Yara summoned again, standing stiff with insult, but hearing the charge earnestly. Brienne unrolled maps. Sam read tale reports of Ironborn movements. Jon spoke only after they debated themselves toward exhaustion. We split response. Lord Davos takes half the royal fleet south to Storm's End, with Yara's fastest longship scouting ahead. Brienne rides with 300 Riverlands horse to relieve the peninsula roads. The king, he added, seeing their objections rise, rides north. North, Tyrion blurted. With a rebellion barking at your gate. Rebellions spread where fear weakens. But if winter demons stalk the Frostfangs again, the realm has no wall left to hold them. Jon met each pair of eyes. I will not fight south when death may ride from north unchallenged. The crown is not castle-bound. Sansa's face betrayed reluctance, yet understanding glimmered there. Then you must ride swift. 200 of my guards will join you. And I. Bran's voice came from the doorway. He rolled in with silent servant's aid, the whites of his eyes paling after long vision. The Roots call. They argued logistics until noon. Tyrion proposed that if the king left, Prince Meryn would remain guest hostage of peace. Martell accepted with mirthful charm, though Serdane's hand hovered sword hilt all the while. Sam began packing Raven Master drafts, obsidian daggers, old maps of the haunted forest. Before Jon departed the council, Sansa halted him with a touch. Wear the crown, she said quietly, even beyond the wall. Let them see their king leads the charge. And, he fingered the weirwood circlet, heavy in battle. So is destiny. She replied. At dusk the city watched torches snake from the Red Keep to the north gate. King Direwolf, chair-bound sage, and a column of spears bearing wolf and dragon banners. The procession vanished into gathering dark as bells tolled again. Softer now, tremulous, yet carrying across fields where fresh grass fought to rise through soot. Children chased after the echo until mothers called them home. Farmers in muddy lanes paused, prayed. And atop the still unfinished tower, Tyrion Lannister stood alone, staring northward, wine forgotten in hand, repeating under breath the old phrase he once despised. The North remembers. He hoped the North also forgave. The king rode through the night, banners snapping overhead. Every hoofbeat seemed drummed to rhythms older than kingdoms, songs of ice meeting fire, of wheels breaking and forging anew, of crowns carved from living wood and men from fleeting courage. Stars wheeled, cold and distant, as if to ask what tale would kindle beneath them. No answer came but the thunder of hooves and the low growl of a white direwolf keeping pace beside his king. By dawn they reached the Trident's fords, mist curling over water like breath from a colossus. Jon halted the column, lifted the crown high where dawn touched it, and for a moment the weirwood leaves shimmered crimson gold against a newborn sky. Ravens burst from a dead elm and hurried north, as though summoned. Onward the king called, voice steady, carrying across river hush. The realms of men await our guard. They plunged into the ford, water splashing bright as tempered steel. Every rider felt the chill. Every rider gripped reins harder. And somewhere far beyond, the storm seed's drums beat. The Kraken Queen's fleet unfurled black sails, and shadows deeper than night stirred behind weirwood roots. Yet the king did not slow, nor did the story that followed. Il. Ka. Sequl. Dawn after dawn unspooled behind them like banners pale and fragile in the rearward sky, each spinning thread of gold dissolving to pallid gray by dusk. The king's column rode north along the King's Road, with a humility that belied its purpose. No fanfare, no minstrels, no trumpets, only the rhythm of hooves and the low mutter of men to waste breath on song. 200 of Sansa's stark archers in mottled gray cloaks flanked the vanguard, their sigils hidden. Behind them came 50 riders of House Manderly, sleeves stitched with silver trout and prancing mermen alike. The free folk outriders, lean women and rangy youths on shaggy northern garrons, shadowed every hedge line and hillock, slipping through winter-thin brush like wisps of smoke. And at the center, beneath a leather awning rigged between 2 wagon bows, Bran Stark rode in silence, his eyes half-hooded against dawn glare, gloved hands folded in his lap. Jon rode forward of that wagon more often than not, Ghost pacing to his right, the direwolf's white fur startling amid dusty cloaks. He spoke sparsely, giving orders at camp, settling disputes that flared over scant oats or torn girths, and nightly conferring with Sir Jaron Slate, the dour captain of Sansa's guard. Yet most hours he kept silent vigil, watching ravens spiral across the sky or counting the distances between lonely farmsteads charred 2 winters ago in the War for the Dawn. The crown of weirwood leaves he wore only at ceremonial halts. On the road it lay wrapped in oiled cloth inside his saddlebag. Each time he cinched the knot tight, Jon felt the crown's presence nonetheless, like a pulse at the base of his skull. Their 3rd evening from the Trident brought them to a hamlet once called Flintstead, but maps now named it simply the Hollows, burned in the years of war, resettled by 3 families of crofters. Jon called the halt before sunset, desiring both proximity to a freshwater spring and the chance to leave coin behind for the crofters' storehouses. As tents sprouted like dull mushrooms upon a slope above the wattle-fenced yards, the king walked down into the village proper with a retinue of only 2 guards. The oldest crofter, a stoop-shouldered woman in a patched linen shift, met him beside a half-rebuilt forge. She squinted, mouth pursed as if tasting every wind. When Jon drew back his hood, she let out a breath sharp as chaff, then bowed without grace but with conviction. "Weren't expectin' wolves and dragons both in one hide," she said. "But the hearth's hot enough for any traveler. Bread's black oat, swift-baked, cheesy's white goat, fine salted. For your men too, if they mind the fences." "Oh, we'll pay in silver stags," Jon promised, "and leave twice the bread we eat." "Coins lighter'n grain," she countered. "Leave us barley seed." "Spring's close, but ground needs sowing." He nodded at once. "Done." A spark of approval lit her dark eyes. "Then king or no, you're welcome." Fires soon dotted the slope. Free folk scouts returned with 2 hares and a handful of cloud-ear mushrooms. Bran requested privacy in the hamlet's fragile sept, really a timber lean-to ringed by half-burnt candles, and 3 northern archers stood guard, while the boy closed his eyes amid weather-worn statues of the 7, and let his mind dance beyond mortal seeing. Jon ate at the communal hearth in the crofter's longhouse. The oat bread cracked like stone under his knife, but steam inside carried the memory of distant honey. Around him, men traded muttered boasts of old hunts. A Manderly knife-thrower who claimed he gutted 3 whites beneath Hardhome cliffs. A free-folk girl bragging she once rode a mammoth calf bareback across a frozen lake. In another life, Jon might have joined their banter, but duty pressed like a thumb upon his larynx. Instead, he listened and learned. When mention drifted to recent disappearances, 2 goatherds lost by the Queen's Road bend, a small shepherd boy found blue-lipped with black frost streaking his cheeks, Jon set down his cup and asked measured questions. The crofters spoke of cold pockets beneath birch stands, of sudden mists that tasted like iron, of wolves refusing to howl some nights. He thanked them, tucked their stories beside Tormund's warnings, and slipped out before moonrise. He found Bran beneath the lean-to roof, the boy's chair angled toward a cracked statue of the father. Wind hissed through broken slats, fanning cold ashes across flagstones. Bran's eyes were open but distant. Only when John laid a hand on the arm of the chair did he blink. "You wandered long," John said. "Wings tire more slowly than legs," Bran answered, voice soft. He did not elaborate further, as if modesty forbade describing the wonders or horrors he'd seen. Instead he asked, "You spoke to the crofters? They fear shadows clotting in the trees. Ghosts scented something earlier after dusk. Nothing visible." Bran's lips parted, and for a heartbeat the candle stub between them fluttered, as though the air itself inhaled. "Some sleeps wait to be woken," he murmured. "But they stir restless. You saw whites." "Not as we remember. Ice remembers them. But this new cold, it chews memory, spits rot." He shivered then, a brief involuntary twitch that made Joan's hair prickle. "I dreamt a shape inside a hollow heart of oak. I could not tell whether it wept or laughed. Nightmare, perhaps." Bran tilted his head. "Or omen." Ghost padded close, pressing a cold nose into Joan's palm. John stroked the direwolf's ruff, drawing comfort. "We ride at first light," he said. "The sooner we reach Castle Black, the sooner we can gauge threat." Bran nodded, eyes already slipping toward that far horizon only he could perceive. Sleep came in snatches for John, gray smudges of oblivion broken by dreams of skittering frost things and gray waves under screaming gulls. When morning bruised the rim of the world, they marched again. Through Maidenpool's ruined outer farms, past the still-fouled lake at Duskendale, into the wide emptiness of Crackclaw Point, where marsh winds tugged at banners until cloth tore along one seam. Everywhere they passed, folk crept from burrows and huts to gape. Some knelt, some touched fingers to brow in wordless salute. A few folded arms and watched, suspicion thick as tar. 5 days upriver from White Harbor's fork they reached Moat Cailin, where mossy towers crouched like broken teeth in a swampy jaw. The causeway beyond, the neck's only sure passage, was still half submerged by late meltwater. John ordered camp, while local cranesmen ferried rough-cut timbers to patch flooded spans. He walked the outer wall that evening with Sir Jaren, studying peat bogs that steamed under dusk chill. "We'll lose 2 days if this water rises," Jaren observed. "Roads already pour north of here." "We risk worse by pushing at night," John countered. He inhaled peat stink and dragonfly whir. "Better fortify the causeway than drown horses." "Yes, Your Grace." The captain hesitated a second, then said, "Sansa's men follow you as shadow, but they're not blind to danger. Let them ride point tomorrow. Ease the free folks' burden." John nodded assent. He valued Jaren's blunt sense, even when it echoed misgivings lurking in his own head. The column had grown taut, nerves strung thin on rumor and marsh whisper. Age of formation might cool frictions. That night he visited Bran again, finding the boy awake, face pale as the weirwood inlay of Joan's crown. Bran's voice barely stirred the air. "I tried to open the greenway from tower tops," he said, "but the weirwoods south of the wall rustle with broken tongues. Their song is stuttered. Can you glean meaning?" Bran's eyes, dark pools, reflected torch glow. "Ice cracks when thaw begins. Trees remember how water once flowed, but forget shape of riverbed. That forgetting is the danger." John laid a hand on his brother's shoulder, wishing he could lend warmth. "Rest, Dot. The wall may offer more stable paths." "Ma'am?" Bran blinked once in affirmation, then closed his eyes. John left, uneasy. The passage through the neck proved slower than hoped. Rains hammered the causeway on the second day, ropes snapped. A supply wagon toppled into black mire and had to be hauled out by 6 oxen and 20 grunting men. Crocodiles, unnatural large this far north, slid through the shallows, eyes glittering. One free folk outrider never returned from a scouting loop. They found only his cap, sodden and slit clean through by something sharper than tooth. John doubled sentry lines and forbade lone patrols. Yet by grit and oath, they reached the northern verge where sentinel pines pierced gray sky. There lay the open heaths of the north, dotted with snow patches even in late spring. The air smelled of resin and the promise of yet dormant violets. Spirits lifted. Songs resurfaced in campfires again. Ballads of the she-bear Maid Mormont, bawdy shanties of White Harbor sailors, ancient free folk chants older than the wall. John listened with weary smile. They were crossing into his birth soil. Whatever the citadel's parchments said, his bones echoed to these winds. White Harbor awaited 4 days further west by a side march. But John chose the straighter route, north-northwest to Long Lake, then along the King's Road extension to Castle Black. He sent a raven to Lady Manderley nonetheless, requesting grain shipments continue southward under escort. His quill hand cramped from writing. Winter's chill seemed lodged in knuckles, unaccustomed to endless parchment. Midway to Long Lake, they came upon the survivors. It was near midnight, with moon only a ragged sliver, when the vanguard's outrider galloped back, voice cracking with urgency. John roused half asleep, buckling sword belt as the messenger gasped. But twisted. John ordered torches lit and rode at once. Bramble thickets shredded his cloak, but within minutes, the gloom parted to reveal a clearing ringed by stunted spruce. At its center 4 men and a woman crouched around a smoldering pile of damp pine, its smoke billowing thick. The strangers' clothes were ragged night's watch blacks, their faces hollow, tarnished by frostbite and soot. One clutched a horn shortbow cracked across the belly. Another bore a broken torch. When Joan's column spilled light upon them, they staggered upright, eyes burning with mixture of hope and terror. "Hold!" John called, raising a palm. "Name yourselves." A man with patchy red beard stepped forward. Sir Jafer Flowers, oathless now, but once Ranger of Castle Black. Tears glistened in sockets too empty. "We fled." His voice fractured, throat a raw rasp. Something came from old Eastwatch shadows. John dismounted, ignoring Jaren's hissed caution. He stepped close enough to smell the bitter stench of half-scabbed wounds. "Where are the rest?" "Dead or lost," Jafer croaked. "Tormund left us 3 nights back, chasing shapes across the Icewind ravine. The dogs turned on their own leads, bit at air, howling." He raised blistered hands. "The fire there burns blue, my lord, but leaves no warmth." The woman collapsed then, breath whistling through cracked lips. Free folk Garin riders rushed to aid. Maester Perrin, Sam's gray-bearded assistant, arrived with waterskin and poultice jar. Bran's wagon clattered into the clearing, lanterns swinging. John knelt beside Jaffer. "What shape?" Flowers trembled. "It was wrong." "Like a man built of empty," he whispered. Snow drifted through him. Eyes shone black as pitch. He carried no blade. Only sound, a scraping, like wind shredding bones against stone. The description chilled John more deeply than the onset night. He gave brisk orders. Hot broth, furs, escorts for the survivors. He conferred with Bran, who merely closed his eyes, brow creased. That dawn, as the wounded slept, John gathered his captains around a frost-stiffened map. He traced the wall's line where Eastwatch once glittered before crumbling in the dragon's wrath. "We ride hard for Castle Black," he said. "Leave the baggage wagons here with Sir Jaren and half the foot. The rest come with me, Bran and Ghost. Speed above comfort." "We risk stranding ourselves from resupply," Jaren warned. "We risk worse if this thing reaches the gift unchecked," John countered. The plan carried, though misgivings shadowed every face. They thinned to a spear-tip column. 50 mounted Stark guards, 30 free folk lancers, 10 Manderley outriders, Bran's wagon, Ghost. Samwell stayed with the slower group to treat Jafer's folk and hasten baggage after them. Maester Perrin insisted on riding with the king. 2 days later, they crested a low ridge and saw the wall's ruins. Dawn washed the world in pearl gray, silhouettes stark against the pallid glow. The once unbroken span now resembled a colossal crown shattered and flung wide. Jagged fangs of ice thrust toward heaven, blue-white cliffs ending in mangled heaps where Daenerys' dragon had carved his path. Between those rents the wall still towered in sections, 90 feet high, crusted with rime. Castle Black crouched at the foot, timbers dark against ice white. Smoke curled from 3 chimneys. The watchtower lantern flickered. Relief nudged John's ribs. At least some garrison remained. The gate creaked open as they approached. A new carved direwolf sigil hung crooked on the lintel. Below, a black banner flapped, its fabric thin. The first to greet them was a woman in patched black leathers, cinched by a red sash. Val's sister-in-law to Mance Raider, once called Wildling Princess. She smiled, though shadows bruised her eyes. "Long roads lead home, Crow King," she said, using the name Free Folk whispered. "Come warm." They stabled horses, shrugged off cloaks heavy with rime, and crowded into the old shield hall, where bright torches threw fierce light on cracked flagstones. Tormund Giantsbane sat beside the hearth, hair a mad halo of ginger sparks. Scarlet bandages wrapped his left forearm. Dried blood flaked his mustache. When Jon strode toward him, the giant laughed, though the sound ended in a cough. "Snow. I said you'd turn up after the best fight, didn't I?" He attempted to rise but winced, settling back. "We got stories to trade." Jon clasped his shoulder, feeling heat through bandage. "Later. First tell me what hunts in the woods." "A shadow," Tormund rumbled, eyes losing mirth. "Not like them walkers we knew. I tracked it 2 days east with 6 spears. Found only empty prints." Snow melted wrong, like candle wax. "But those prints hissed." He lifted his bandaged arm. "When I tried to spear the shape, my flesh froze under fur. Spear shaft split. Thing laughed without breath. Men broke, bolted. I dragged 2 back before the rest shattered." Around him silence thickened. Even the hearth seemed to dim. Bran maneuvered his chair forward, wheels scraping. He regarded Tormund a long beat, as if comparing vision to testimony. Finally he asked, "Does it move alone?" "I saw one, but the woods whispered more." "They seem how outraged." Jon turned to Val. "How many at Castle Black?" 36 living rangers, 10 women, 8 children," she answered. "Wildling hunters come and go, but most fled east to the Skirling Pass after the first vanishings. Supplies? Enough dried fish for 2 moons. Barley stores half rotted from damp." Jon paced. The shield hall's ancient watch shields, names of brothers long dead, glistened with soot. He stopped before one. Jon Snow scratched across aged oak. An older self, a dead oath, reborn now as wait anew. He issued orders. Scouts double posts along Frostfang foothills. All civilians housed within inner yard palisade. Bonfires stocked with pine tar to burn bright and hot. Bran requested 3 ravens to send word, though he admitted ravens seemed reluctant of late, as if northern winds snarled them from sky. Jon authorized, hoping. That night, Bran summoned Jon, Val, Tormund, and Maester Perrin beneath the huge weirwood at the rear of Castle Black's Godswood. The tree's bark glowed under lanterns, its red leaves few but vivid. Bran's breath plumed as he spoke. "I touched it tonight," he said, "and felt echoes old and new. A piece of the long night tries to awaken, but something within it is twisted, like a song hummed wrong on purpose." Tormund spat. "Magic talk. Can we stab it?" "Perhaps," Bran answered. "The thing hunts memories. It grows where stories died half told." He looked at Jon. "We must lure it." "Lure?" Jon's brows furrowed. "A king's crown is a beacon," Bran whispered. "It will seek to silence the tale of union, of hope. You, brother, are bright lure among ruins." Jon felt chill despite fur. "Very well. Where?" Bran's gaze drifted north, beyond the shattered arch. "The Night Fort. Oldest memory on the wall. A wound never closed. If we stand there with fire and story both, it will come." Silence swallowed them. The Night Fort lay 30 leagues west, abandoned for a century, rumored haunted even before whitened bones walked. Jon weighed risk, but in truth no plan better. He laid palm against rough weirwood bark. It seemed to hum, or perhaps his pulse answered. "We leave tomorrow," Maester Perrin protested. The wounded, but Jon cut gently. "Tormund stays to guard Castle Black. Val, you choose 20 trackers. I take 50 archers, 10 torchmen. Bran with me." "Dine," Bran added. "And dragonglass." Sam stored crates in larder. So at dawn torches sputtered against an iron sky, and lines formed outside the ruined west gate. Snow swirled, fine, dry, needle-sharp. Jon donned the crown again, feeling the leaves cold against brow. Ghost prowled ahead, senses taut as bowstring. The march proved grueling. Where once the King's Road hugged the wall's lee, now icefall debris forced detours into ankle-deep drifts and splintered spruce deadfall. They skirted pits where vast sheets of the wall had sheared off, leaving chasms that breathed cold. Twice they spotted shapes in the distance. Perhaps elk, perhaps watchers more sinister. Val's trackers loosed arrows but struck nothing. The fourth night brought them within sight of the night fort looming. Even half collapsed it towered monstrous. Stone blocks sagging, gatehouse crooked like a drunkard's grin, silent wells yawning dark. Snow covered its inner yard in sculpted dunes like desert waves. Jon ordered camp just inside the east sally door, one of few arches still intact. Bonfires soon blazed, tar-heavy smoke curling into a sky devoid of stars. The watchers ate stew thickened with acorn meal, chewed hard bread, drank thin ale. Some told ribald jokes to stave nerves. Bran asked Jon to walk the yard with him. 2 guards pushed his chair over crusted snow. Bran guided them to a breach in the northern curtain wall where ragged chunks of ice jutted like dragon teeth. Beyond stretched the haunted forest, a ligature of black trunks and deeper voids. Bran drew a shallow breath. "It is close." Jon scanned the tree line. Nothing moved. Yet his own breath steamed heavy, heavier than air that seemed suddenly still. No, not still, expectant. "Ready torches," he told the nearest guard. "Keep flint in hand." Wind shifted. Snow hissed across stone. Ghost bristled. Then the wind ceased entirely, as if strangled, and an almost imperceptible hum filled the void. A vibration rather than a sound, felt in teeth, in bone marrow. Lantern glass rattled. Shadows pooled between trees, merging, coiling. The forest edge darkened beyond natural night, as if some vast curtain drew across the world. From within that ink a shape detached. At first a whirl of swirling flakes, then a tall figure formed of nothing in frost, silhouette wavering. No eyes gleamed, no face, but menace radiated cold, bright as moonlight. Snowflakes within it cracked as they drifted, falling like shards of glass. Torches ignited with a roar, their light painting the stone orange. The shadow halted at the wall break, regarding the fire as though sniffing at memory. Bran whispered a word Jon could not decipher. The thing twitched. Jon stepped forward, dragon glass long knife drawn, crowned lofty above. His voice rang. "I am Jon, son of Stark and Targaryen, king sworn to guard the living. Who comes?" The shape's edges quivered. The hum peaked like iron scraped by whetstone. In its center, an emptiness opened. Round, dark, deeper than pit. A whisper spilled, layered with echoes. "Forgotten, forgotten, forgotten." Cold ripped across the yard. Men staggered, torches guttering. Bran flung an arm to steady himself. Jon forced a step, blade raised, though each nerve shrieked retreat. Ghosts snarled. "Names are not forgotten," Jon answered. "I name you darkness that preys on memory. Stand aside." Men. Laughter, broken glass, a river of ice pebbles, rose from the shape. Snow scudded in unnatural eddies. Within that blur images shimmered. Ares on his throne of bared blades. Ned at the block. Daenerys crying as Drogon roared over King's Landing. Jon himself falling beneath daggers of the Watch. Bran plummeting from a tower window. Each scene flashed and fractured into fine white dust. Bran hissed, pain flickering across pale face. "It feeds on story," he gasped. "On what binds time." Jon realized then this foe was no walker, no wight. It was a wound, the rift left when dragonfire shattered the wall, a breach between the world that was and the echo that demanded erasure. And it craved the brightest tale to devour. He lifted the crown from his brow, held it high. Flame-light gleamed along black iron thorns and white weavewood leaves. "If you want memory, take this," he challenged. "Take the symbol. Spare the living." The shadow recoiled, as if uncertain. Then it surged, all jagged swoop of midnight. Ghost leapt, meeting it mid-air, fangs snapping through emptiness that crackled like rending parchment. Direwolf yelped, thrown aside by force unseen. Jon charged, dragonglass raised. Blade met the shape's flank. A shriek rent night, more feeling than sound. Frost exploded outward, stinging like sparks. Jon slashed again, each cut draining heat from his arm until veins burned icy. The shadow thrashed, edges frayed into swirling shards that danced, then reknit. But each reknitting came slower. Bran raised both hands, eyes rolling white. Wind whipped from nowhere, funneling snow into spear-length threads. They pierced the shape, pinning it as though weaving net of winter. "Now!" Bran cried. Jon hurled the crown into the creature's core. The weirwood leaves blazed crimson where they passed torch glow, then vanished in the void. For half a breath nothing happened. Then a groan, vast and sorrowful, rippled through stone. The shadow shrank upon itself, swallowing crown and snow spears alike, twisting, collapsing. It imploded with a hiss like water dousing forge iron. Sudden stillness fell. Torchlight steadied. Snowdrift resumed its natural hush. Where the shape had been, only a shallow depression of frost remained. Within it gleamed fragments. Bits of black iron thorn, edges frosted white. Jon knelt, brushing them. They crumbled to powder. Silence broke under cheers from archers along the wall. But Bran's head drooped. Jon hurried, catching him before he could sag from chair. Bran's eyes focused slowly. "Is it done?" Jon asked. Bran's gaze turned north. That shard was only first echo, but song's pitch shifts now. Others may fade. Jon understood. They had not slain a beast, but healed a rift, taught the wound to close. More might remain, in forests, in lost ruins. But hope had found foothold. They tended ghosts' bruised ribs, relit torches thrice stronger, and kept watch until dawn painted the night fort gold. As sun rose, Jon saw that the snow in the yard bore no footprint save their own. The depression already filled softly, as though night's violence were but rumor. He gathered his men. "We ride east to Eastwatch's ruins," he said. "If more echoes stir, we end them." None questioned. Courage brimmed where fear had lived. Val's hunters volunteered to scout. Tormund, when Raven bore news, swore to ride down any lingering darkness. Before leaving, Jon paused at the breach, staring out across endless forest. He felt light without the crown, yet whole. Memory lived not in metal band, but in hearts around him, in stories shored by blood and breath. Bran beside him murmured, "We'll craft a new crown. One for each season, growing and changing." Jon smiled. "A crown that remembers." They mounted and rode out, banners snapping against brightening sky. And though war's drums echoed faint from far-off storms and in ships of black sails, still traced southern waters, hope traveled northward on hoofbeat and raven wing, its tale refreshed by every eye that witnessed and every tongue that spoke. The story, like the realm, endured.